Okay everyone, I'm sure I've talked about soft select in one of my other videos, but I will just make a video specifically for that to explain it as thoroughly as possible for a lot of you beginners that just want to play around with it, because it is fun to squish things. Really quickly, I'm going to drop in a polycube. You guys can use the shelf if you want. Make sure I hit the 5 key to turn on shaded display, and I will just squish it around a little bit. Okay, so now I've got a cube here, which you should all be able to figure out how to drop in with the shelf. I use the marking menus. I talk about that a lot in my other videos. Feel free to watch those. But anyways, so I'm going to go to vertex mode. I'm going to highlight a couple verts and just click and drag, and you see that's normal behavior for using the move tool on a couple of selected vertices. Now, if I tap the B key, it makes them more colorful, and if I hold down the B key and click and drag, it will adjust the fall-off radius. Now, if I adjust the fall-off radius and now I drag around, you notice the whole thing is a little more squishy. The bright yellow, of course, meaning it is fully selected, and then the farther it tapers away from yellow and gets closer to black, that means that there is less the operation that I do is going to affect those other vertices less and less as it falls away from the center of the selection. Okay, so that is it. Tapping the B key toggles the soft select on and off. Holding down the B key and then left click and drag will adjust the fall off, and you see the colors changing. There's that radius dialog there. That's the simple aspect of it. Let me just explain it a little bit more thoroughly for those of you that want to know more about it. Let's get a little bit more intricacy to our mesh here. I'm just gonna drag out a few extrusions here. There's one or two options in the soft select dialog, which I'm going to show you in a minute, that are kind of useful to know about. So now that I've got this more interesting shape here, if I subdivide this a bit, it'll be a little bit more obvious what's happening. So okay, I'm just going to go ahead and let me go into face mode, highlight the faces, add some divisions, do it again. Okay, now we've subdivided it significantly. Soft select, by the way, it's mostly useful if you have enough subdivisions like this. You're not going to really necessarily find it necessary to use soft select unless you have a model subdivided enough to make squishiness useful, if that makes any sense. You'll see what I mean eventually, but ultimately this is probably too subdivided, especially considering there's no real changes in the faces here. This is too much geometry right off the bat. You wouldn't want to just crank up the subdivisions just to use soft select. It's just not really efficient. We'll get to that anyway. But if you want to play with it for now, you need some subdivisions to make it worthwhile. Let's say I grab these verts here, and I tap the B key, and notice that, like, if I start to move this now, notice it's squishing. It's basically the fall off is radiating from this center, and it's a volumetric scenario here, so it's affecting this side of the object. Well, something I find extremely useful, first of all, if you double click the move tool or the rotate tool or the scale tool, any of them would work, but if you double click one of these tools, you get your tool settings dialog box. So inside this tool settings dialog box, there's tons of good stuff in here. You could definitely play with it a lot. First of all, if something goes wrong and your tool's behaving really weird, I recommend you hit the reset tool button. It should reset a lot of these things. But notice it didn't reset the soft select, which, you know, I wasn't sure. Okay, well, you can do this. You reset this here. So resetting soft select, That is a good thing. But notice it didn't turn it off though. You still have to toggle it on and off. Soft select. This is what you're doing when if I hit the B key over here. See, if I hit the B key, it's toggling that on and off. That's what you're toggling on and off with the B key. Now again, watch. If I hold down the B key and click and drag, notice it changed my fall off radius. So again, same options. You just don't have to dig in here. If you want to use the hotkeys, it's a lot easier than digging into this menu. Now, this is what I was going to get out a minute ago. Again, notice I'm shifting this around and this little chunk moves. Well, if I change the fall off mode from volume to surface, now I can affect this without affecting this. Now, instead of falling off in a volumetric radius, what it's doing now is it's falling off along the surface. So the fall off goes along that way, which is, I find, a lot easier. Imagine, if you will, that this was like the legs of a character or something. If you wanted to shape this leg and manipulate this leg without screwing up this one, that would be the way to do it. Make sure you go to surface mode instead of volumetric. Again, there's a lot of different interpolations you can mess with here. If you wanted to adjust this fall off curve, these are way even crazier and fancier than just the radius. The radius would be makes more sense on a typical thing, but you could do really interesting, weird, crazy stuff. I don't really find a use for playing with these, to be honest, but feel free to explore if you want. Normally, I just keep it on the default, and then adjust my radius as needed. This is a great thing to do if you've made a face, if you've made a character's face, and you want to change the character's expression. I'm sure you can find plenty of tutorials online for that. Anyways, so this is soft select. This is the best way to do it. There are other versions of soft select, like node-based ones. I wouldn't really recommend messing with those, especially as a beginner. I do know that there are some uses for that, but I don't think they're uses that you would need anytime soon until you get into rigging or anything crazy like that. So that's soft select, and hopefully you will enjoy playing with this. Again, I wouldn't recommend putting this much resolution into a piece of geometry right off the bat anyway. The more points you have in a model, the more points you have to manipulate, and then it gets really messy and complex, and you will beat your head against a wall. Keep your model as simple as possible, as long as possible. Only start adding subdivisions and extra edges when you have no other choice in order to create the shape you need. But if you want to just play around with this, this is fine. One thing this is useful, I'll just really quickly show you. One thing I do find it especially useful for, let's say you drop a polygon plane down, and let me just go ahead and crank up the subdivisions on it. This is pretty useful if you wanted to just really quickly lay down some a terrain with some hill shapes, or you could see real quickly what I could do with that, and shrink the fall off a bit, make a sharper bump, I don't know, whatever. The point is, if you're trying to drop down a really quick terrain, this would be this could be useful. Again, it's really too high of a resolution for this. There's too many edges here for game stuff. This would have to be optimized. But if you're in a hurry and you want to drop down a quick terrain, that's a good way to do it. Cool. All right. Hopefully you guys have fun with this. All right. See ya.